Dude, we're back.
Hey!
Awesome. Welcome back to the Kessel Chat in a galaxy far, far away, where Ryan and I get to sit down and talk about Star Wars for as long as we want, or 35, 40 minutes, whatever comes first. You know, whatever our wives are going to let us talk about Star Wars for tonight.
I was about to say, honestly, this show could be a 24-hour gig for me. I'm all about it. Yes. It only cuts off because we have these other lives we have to lead, and my kids like food. And I gotta go, get that money. But otherwise, yeah, this could be easily a thing that we're talking about all the time. So glad to welcome everybody back to the Kessel Chat.
Absolutely. Yeah, we needed a little break last week. There was some other stuff going on the side where we get paid money to do things, but that's okay. We took a little break. We come back. We're ready. I decided to go with some social lubricant tonight for the show.
Just well done.
All wet a little bit.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. So, you gotta go. It's funny. I'm on the other end of the spectrum, rocking some coffee here. I won't say the name. Maybe that's a future sponsor. But I will say.
See, that, I like your future. I love your strategic thinking, dude. You're always looking 4 steps ahead. I love that.
Always turning ideas over. But yeah, rocking some coffee for the evening to kind of keep things going. But yeah, I'm really excited. There's been a lot of big news that's come out. Jeff, you were already talking about a lot of big stuff that's already coming down the pipeline, and we're hearing a lot of really cool things. So it's, as we've said before, it's a great time to be a fan.
Absolutely. So before we get started on our top topic of the night, I mentioned to everybody once before that we are going to be raffling off a book. I've got it here behind me. It's not on the shelf anymore, but it's on my bookshelf behind me where you can't see it. It's the first book in Timothy Zahn's latest trilogy, all about Thrawn, our favorite, love to hate him Imperial. It's called Thrawn. Thrawn Ascendancy is the name of the trilogy, and this particular book is called Chaos Rising. And if you know anything about Thrawn, he's a Chiss, blue skinned Chiss, comes from wild space, and his people are referred to as the Chiss Ascendancy. That's basically like their little fiefdom within wild space. And this series takes place when Thrawn is, I don't want to say early 20s, but in his youth, he has only been in his military career in the Ascendancy for X number of years. So it 100% takes place in wild space. And what's interesting about it is it's again another take on this galaxy that we have not seen. Whereas even the last couple of episodes of this show, you and I have talked about the High Republic and what the High Republic means, and like this is a new era that we've never explored. Well, in this Thrawn series, you've got wild space, which hardly anyone's ever been to. Even the Chiss have to do special things to be able to travel around at light speed or through hyperspace there, which I think is amazing because it gives us the opportunity to see a whole other era or world of places that is not easily navigated. The stories can't easily get in there, which means that the conflict and the strife is just so different than what we've experienced in the rest of the galaxy. Makes for really good stories. And the cool part is the second book, I think, is coming out in a few weeks. I've already got that pre-ordered on Amazon. It'll be here, but the second book should be here pretty soon. So it's just so much content. So much awesome content is constantly coming out.
What I also like to, and this is also a part of like kind of the big news that came out this week, is what I like is how Star Wars is doing a great job right now at reconnecting with things, like kind of harvesting some things that were a part of the stories that we really loved from those early years. I like the callbacks to Thrawn. Not because they're doing it from a fan service perspective. I think if they were doing it that way, it would be really flat, and you wouldn't have so many fans like really embracing what they're seeing. I feel like they are doing this really correctly. They're finding characters, they're finding storylines that had a lot of area for exploration and really spending time there. And pulling Thrawn into this is like really, I'm a really big fan of that. I spoilers for Mandalorian, the discussion on hearing Thrawn connected to that is also really exciting. It's like having all of these moments where we can connect back to those stories, I think, are great. Again, if we get to a moment where we're able to see Shadows of the Empire stuff, I'm going to be all behind that. That's my Star Wars era. So yeah, I'm really excited to kind of see this exploration. I think that's a good direction that they're moving in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And to your point, it's all these little pockets of stories that have not been touched yet. And as much as in the last 10 years or so, myself and many others have wanted them to hit on those, I'm really, really happy that they didn't, and that what they focused on or what they waited on was getting through all this other stuff they had to do in the Skywalker era, etc., and kind of now put out the Mandalorian and then put something else out, so that what you seed in there is like, hey, put out the Mandalorian and you get one little snippet of Thrawn's name as an example. And like, wait, hold on, you're going to talk about him? And it sort of brings all that emotion back in a way that wasn't like a big bombshell, Thrawn's got a TV show. It's like, no. He was in Star Wars Rebels several years ago. Then nothing.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden he gets just teased in a minute. You're like, oh my gosh, they're probably going to make something really big out of him. And I love that because it makes you feel the sense of anticipation as a fan. But it also makes you realize when you start going through all of his content, we don't know that much about his character at all. And so we're going to really get to learn in these books and in other things that they're doing through the Ahsoka TV show and whatever else. We're likely going to get to see a lot more of those sorts of characters. And my favorite part about him as an anti-hero, let's call him an anti-hero, because he's not, when you read the last Timothy Zahn series, if you get a chance to read that trilogy, in it, what you realize is that he's really not a bad guy. Like, in the sense of like a true villain, he's not a villain. There's a very particular reason he came to where he came, to join the Imperial military and do what he's doing. And it's not out of, I'm bad, I'm joining the Empire because I love what all the nasty stuff the Emperor is doing and would go do that. No, he did it for his own people's reasons. And
Mhm.
when you kind of get to it, you realize like the decisions he makes are they're always smart and tactical decisions based off of an epic goal he has. And he even admits in the story that all governments are corrupt. You do
Yeah.
the best you can within that to make a difference. It's like, you know what? That's very analogous to stuff that we deal with today in our geopolitical climates. Is that there's corruption everywhere. What you do is the best you can to work within that in an environment.
No, and I think that was actually talked about really well in The Last Jedi. And I know that that was one of those things that people struggled with, because it's great when, it's the whole, it goes back to like cowboy movie days. It's like your heroes are wearing the white hats, and your villains, they're wearing the black hats and gloves and masks. And while Star Wars at its like surface level looks like that, you got a bad guy who's all in dark clothes, wearing a mask. You got the good guy, all in like basically earth tones, and it's like you can call back to that. But what made Star Wars, in my opinion, a great story, and what is making things like calling back to Thrawn a really good idea, is because when you add complexity to these characters, it makes them less. It makes the story less squishy. It gives a lot more depth to that story. And for me, I absolutely love that. I love complexity in a villain, and you even hear that too in what people are talking about with like the Zack Snyder Justice League, right? The that new cut, and the definition that's being added as far as complexity from a villain standpoint. And that's what Thrawn really brings. He wasn't just a bad guy who does bad things and I want to consume power or this or that. There's actually a lot of weight behind his actions. There's a lot of thought behind what he's doing. And in fact, that's what makes him so dangerous, and a villain that or an anti-hero, as you pointed out, but a villain that actually poses a true threat to our heroes. And I really like stories that have that. I'm not really into, it's just the the personification of evil character. It's like we've seen that before. That's all great, but we need some
Mm-hmm.
depth in those characters now.
I couldn't agree more. It creates that sort of bad guy good guy dynamic. There's the
Yep.
hero and there's the the villain. It creates this false sense of that's how the world could be. There's clearly someone who does bad things and clearly someone who does good things, and purely for the sake of doing bad and or good. And that's not how reality works. And that is
No.
very fantasy. So most people would say, well, it's a fiction, so that it's okay. It can be a fantasy. It doesn't have to be real. It's like, you're right, but people don't connect with that for very long. What they connect with is something they can actually see in the real world. They can be a metaphor for something that is actually real. And so having a nuanced set where not just a bad person, like from your perspective, they're not doing good things to you, but that doesn't mean they're 100% objectively bad. When you put those sorts of characters or situations in place, what it lets the audience connect with, in my opinion, is I can see a variety of real world things in this, which allows my mind to connect with it more and want to stay with that story even longer
Mhm.
because it resonates with me so personally. It's not like, oh wow, it's like, oh my god, that reminds me of so and so, or that reminds me of this other thing. Oh, I want to hear more of that. Wow, this is just really hitting me. As opposed to, yeah, they're just bad. Sith, bad
Yeah.
guys, red lightsabers.
Yeah.
The space
It's like
wizards don't like each other. Okay, they're fighting. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
cool, but I mean that's not reality.
No, exactly. And it's funny because there's only a couple of really great stories where that works out very well. Because when you can't easily supply complexity and depth to your villains, what ultimately happens is you get these characters who you could care less about. Like using the Justice League example, I could have cared less about Steppenwolf. He just seemed like, oh, it's just a bad guy.
Yeah.
The same thing happens in other series, and you can see it too with like Thor: The Dark World. I'm sure there's fans out there of that. You can see a lot of these types of examples of villains that are just set up to be knocked down, and it's like, no, I don't want to see that. And in fact, I'm also okay with the story taking a political stance. I might not agree with it, and that's totally fine. But you know what? Artwork is political. All artwork is a series of choices that you're having to make. It's a message that you want to tell. So I would much rather someone make commitments to that message, even if I don't like it, because I want to see a vision that's being brought out. I don't want something that's like milk toast.
It's art.
And
You
and
get the
often you
artist,
get
you
that
get
in
an
heroes
artist's
and villains.
interpretation of some message in this, and that's interesting. Like whether
Yep.
you agree or disagree, it's their interpretation of a thing that creates the interest for you as a viewer of that art form, whether it's TV, movies, physical paintings, pictures, whatever. It's that conflict, either the conflict in the piece of art or the conflict between you and the piece of art, or you and the artist, that creates an interest that makes you want to analyze it and try to understand more about it. That's what makes it so interesting. And stories are another art form, and it works the same way.
Yeah, it's the stuff that, and again, like I'm not trying to throw people under the bus or any artwork under the bus. Like, great, congratulations. I think that if people are able to build things, that's great. I think that often studios get involved, and they sometimes will they'll get involved in a way where they're worried about alienating an audience where they know that they need to make a certain amount of money. And I totally understand that, because, hey, like that's what kind of keeps this machine going to allow us to be able to engage with these stories. So I'm totally on board with the realism of that. But I feel like I'm far more, I think more about stories, even ones that I disagree with, if they've made a journey to take a point, to tell a story, or to have a point of view. I love when I get to see that. And again, like I have watched a lot of things that I'm like, I didn't really like the execution of that, or I didn't really agree with the message of this, or I totally disagree with the message of that. But I'd much rather have things like that to think about, or ponder, or stay with me, versus coming out of an experience like that where I'm just like, well, I guess I just wasted 2 hours of my time, or read a book where it's like, oh, this is going nowhere.
Yep.
These characters are doing nothing and going nowhere.
Yep.
And that's why I like a character like Thrawn. To bring this all the way back, is Thrawn is motivated, has points of view, and is making decisions, which is exactly what our heroes are doing. And they talk a lot about, when you look at like how stories are created, or really great movies, and the people will talk about the story circle, like how a hero's journey will go through that story circle. But often what makes a great story is when a hero is put up against a villain who is their exact opposite number, who is looking to accomplish the thing that the hero would hate, and backwards the other way, that they are both diametrically opposed, and they have motivations behind why they're doing what they're doing. That's what makes really great stories, is what keeps us coming back, and it's what has made Star Wars work since 1977, is that you get and really what made it grow after Empire is you get this connection. And so I love the callbacks to this. There's so much that Disney, I think, can farm from, whether it is Thrawn, or even you could go back to the novel that came out between Star Wars and Empire, which is what is a Splinter of the Mind's Eye. There are so Kyber crystals mentioned there. There's so many great things that can be harvested that are inside of that lore, that are in that Legends lore. And I would love for them to pair the right writer or the right director, or anything, and be able to either get the book, the comic, or the movie that helps to tell that story. That's what I would like to see.
Absolutely, dude. And well, I think we're going to get a chance to see that in one of our favorite characters,
Oh.
Obi-Wan. Trying to practicing my segues here. And one of our favorite characters, I know he's one of my favorite characters, just period, in Star Wars, always has been, Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's getting his own series, and that's what we definitely wanted to dive in tonight, is really get into the new TV series that's coming out. They haven't set a date for it yet. I think it's going to happen in 2022, I think is what they're saying.
Yep.
Not only I think it's filming set to start mid-year this year, but they just announced all the casting, which was kind of cool. And I didn't prep to show it here, but I can try to probably do a picture-in-picture here in a minute. But they announced all the casting. It's a pretty cool cast. One of my, and I know you've got a host of stuff to talk about with this, so we'll definitely get to that. I wanted to throw out that one of the most interesting things to me was seeing I forgot their names, but the two actors who they had cast originally to play Owen and Beru.
Oh yeah,
Those
yeah.
two actors are
Joel Edgington and I think it's
yes.
Bonnie Plies or
I think it's
something.
Bonnie Pies
Yeah,
is I think it
yeah.
is her last name.
Both of them from shot they were in Attack of the Clones. They were the younger Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, and they were filmed at the end of Attack of the Clones in what is like considered what the Harry Potter scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of Obi-Wan passing off the baby Luke to Owen, and then you get the binary sunset again and the Force theme. A great moment in Star Wars history. I was actually super excited to see both of them appearing in this role and being in this series, because in
We might
my
have
mind,
oh, there we go.
and I'm sorry, I don't know if I've cut out there, if my audio cut out
No,
there.
you're okay. You're good. We lost you just for a second,
perfect.
but you're good.
Excellent. So I don't think you get those intervening Obi-Wan years without having the connection of getting Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. Like that to me is so great
agree.
to see them.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I remember in A New Hope when Owen makes a comment to Luke about like or to Beru about he's just like his father. I forget the exact quote, but he makes a quote about that in the reference. Again, it goes back to the other stuff like we talked about with the High Republic, these throwbacks of like at one point 10,000 Jedi were the beacons of light in the galaxy or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Well, this is the same sort of thing to me. Is like you think back to Owen saying that to Beru when Luke is in his teens, in early 20s, whatever, and he's about ready to go off and do all this, start a hero's journey adventure stuff before the two of them end up dying. You hear that, okay, what was that like? Like, how is he actually like his father? Like, wait, what do you mean he's like his dad? We never get to see that. We never get to explore that. And now we get to see, not only do we get to see, I'm hoping, some part of Luke there someplace, either Luke or maybe it's not even about Luke. Maybe he's not even a big part of the story. Maybe it's more about, I'm actually kind of hoping that there's a lot more conflict between Obi-Wan and Beru and Owen. I want to see this
absolutely
like starting point of I'm here to help them, kind of wary, like, okay, we'll take him. Thank you for dropping him off, but I'm not. You're gonna stick around? Oh, okay. So you're just gonna live there in the mountains. All right, cool. A couple years goes by. Dude, wait, you're still here? You're just creeping on the hill over here, watching over us. All right, you're being a little creepy, but okay. Like I'm being a smartass, but like I'm actually very interested to see how that plays out, because I've got to imagine they didn't have a really great relationship. I can't imagine that would turn into a very positive relationship, because his whole reason for being there was to make sure that he could protect the kid, Luke. But more importantly, I think their perspective. This is to the speculation thing you brought up earlier before we started the show. My speculation here is that they see it as like, dude, you are going to attract Vader or his father here. You're going to bring the Empire here, and this is going to turn into a shit show. Pardon my French. Like, this is going to turn into a nightmare for all of us. Why are you here? You need to get the F out of here. And he's like, no, that's not how it works, blah, blah. They're not going to listen. They're like, we're raising a kid. We're trying to protect this kid, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's going to be a lot that happens there.
Yeah, I'm actually hoping for exactly the same thing that you're saying, because, okay, one, and by the way, there's a really great YouTube video. It's by Michael Beretti of Belated Media, where he does this version of what if he wrote episodes 1, 2, and 3. And he talks a lot about in episode 2, one of the struggles of the Beru and Owen characters at that time, and the way that Attack of the Clones is made is it's dark what they're going to have to deal with. That basically he's like, okay, so Beru and Owen don't have a tremendous amount of experience with Anakin, other than this guy who just kind of shows up, goes and kills a bunch of Tusken Raiders, comes back, buries his mom, takes the droid that was working on working with them, says, that one's mine, by the way, I built that when I was a kid, and then takes off. Then a new guy they've never met shows up and says, you remember that one guy that killed all those Tusken Raiders? This is his baby.
Like, fun fact, he had a kid. Do you want that kid? Cool. And
he
I'm gonna go live over here and just hang out while you guys do that. You're gonna be okay with that, right?
no, exactly. Yes, exactly. And then that's what I mean. It's there is something that's kind of terrifying about that. Of like, hey, I need you. You did not sign up for this, and you don't know me, but I need you to take care of this kid, because it's super important. And so my hope, my real hope in this is one, there actually is some history that must have happened there where we're able to really get into Owen knowing what Anakin was up to, that Anakin was this great hero of the Clone Wars. And maybe, just maybe, he doesn't tell Owen that Anakin is Darth Vader. Maybe he just tells him that Anakin, maybe it's the same lie, the point of view lie that Obi-Wan tells Luke, which is Vader betrayed and murdered your father. And now, Owen and Beru, you need to watch this boy, because this guy, Darth Vader, he killed Anakin and he could come at any time. And that there's obviously tension there. Because you've got a character who literally says, Luke's like, oh yeah, I wonder if this old Ben, I wonder if the droid says he belongs to Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then looks that Beru and Owen look at each other like, oh no, what? And Luke, yeah, and Luke, yeah, it's a trap. And Luke says, I wonder if it's old Ben. And he's like, I told you to stay away from that wizard. He's just a crazy old wizard. And it's like, he's so dismissive of Obi-Wan. There is a history there.
Yes.
There is a story there. And I would love to see that. I'd also like to see, and we were talking about this before. I think it would be fun for each of us to kind of talk about what's something that you would love to see. What's something that you'd love to see explored in that Obi-Wan show?
Oh, it's a really good question. I'm actually very interested to see the effect that. Okay, let me set this up. So this show takes place roughly 19 years, give or take, after Luke has been dropped. Not 19 years, sorry. There's a 19-year gap. It takes place, I think, like 10 years after he dropped off Luke. So he's been there for a decade. He's established, he's living. Whatever drama likely has led up to this point or is going to happen, a lot of it has probably already happened, or a good chunk of it has already happened. So something I'm actually interested to see is how is it affecting Obi-Wan being by himself? Probably not going to be able to, because at some point, I don't care how good a Jedi you are and how much meditation you do, you're connecting with Qui-Gon. We've already been hinted at that at the end of Revenge of the Sith. You're connected with Qui-Gon. You're trying to learn how to access, your own Force being after your body dies. Like Qui-Gon learned how to do, because we saw it in Yoda, and Yoda told Obi-Wan, "I'm going to teach you how to do this." So I think I would love to see us. I'm really curious to see us. Obi-Wan dealing with like how he's maintaining his Jedi-ness without going cuckoo bananas from living by himself on a desert planet. He can't interact really with Beru and Owen. He might want to, drunken stupor, go over there. Hey guys, you want to hang out? Like, that's going to be awkward and not really going to be a thing. So like, that's going to cause some problems. But I'm also curious to see, how is he deflecting, because he's going to have to go to town periodically, Mos Eisley and wherever else periodically, to get food and supplies. How does he prevent people from recognizing who the hell he is? Now, Outer Rim, many Jedi in the waning years of the Republic never really came to Outer Rim planets, especially places like Tatooine. But still, people are going to recognize the swagger and the walk and the talk of a Jedi. Those who have been around, bounty hunters, smugglers, all of those people in the trade are going to recognize those things. Who's picking up on that? How is he dealing with that? And how is he interacting with those people as they recognize him and has to do something about it? Or in a fit of like frustration or whatever, one night just decides to get a little little schwasty face at the local pub and start talking his mouth off a little too much, or his lightsaber falls out of his tunic or something like that. Like I'm being a little flip about those comments, but for me, those are all real things that happen to real people. Like, you've been someplace for 10 years by yourself, or you're supposed to be by yourself. Shit's not going to go very smooth. Like, you're going to have to like live, and you're not going to be, I don't care how good a Jedi you are or how well trained of a monk you are. That is going to be a challenging situation for any sentient being to deal with. And I'm very curious to see how those slip ups affect him. Does the Empire show up periodically or graze by periodically and give him like nightmares? Like, how does that play out? And like, how is it spinning around in his own head? I think a lot of this is going to be sort of like desert delusion, sort of Obi-Wan, and how he's coping with all of that. Because you've already said it, that conflict, whether it's between one person and another, or two groups, or inside of a person's own mind as they're trying to deal with things, it's those things that cause a person and a character to grow over time, and it's going to lead to what what Alec Guinness did for us in A New Hope originally. But I'm very curious to see, like, what did you have to go through to get to that point, to become that person 20, 30 years later?
Yeah, I feel like this is like by the way, I completely agree. Like I feel like you actually get a character that's being pushed to their limits. And just like a literary reference that I just came across not that long ago. I think it was Faulkner, that was the greatest stories are the ones where it's the human heart standing in conflict with itself. And it's like you talked a lot about the kind of like the monk attitude, like the Jedi attitude. How does one man stay faithful in the desert by himself? You know what I mean? And I know that that's a religious statement, by the way. Like I'm very clear about what that means. But at the same time, I find that keeping of the faith of if you think of the Jedi as a way of living, and here he is, the kind of the lone candle that's out there, that's the last hope of the Jedi, so to speak, protecting the potential savior of the Jedi. And I think that's a great story to explain, because you've got one character, Obi-Wan, who is there hoping against hope that he is going to get something in a connection with Luke, that maybe Luke can be the great savior that the universe can be. And he is being raised by two people who could not be more diametrically opposed to that, who are like, no, if we teach him the Force, it's not just that he could end up like Anakin, it's that why put that burden on him? Why can't he just lead a normal life, go to Tashi Station, pick up some power converters, hang out there? It's like
Nice
you've
name
got
drop.
yeah, right. You got two separate ideals for one person. And this is a story that is told so many times. Like you see that in like things, and I'm sorry, I'm apparently dropping too many literary references.
You're just waxing poetic over here, man. You do your thing.
Where you've got these two polar opposites. One who's saying you need to belong to the universe. Luke has to go out there and save the galaxy potentially. And then the other side that's saying, just stay at home. Just stay here, stay at home. You don't need to be, and even Baru understands that conflict with he's just got too much of his father in him. That to me is such an interesting story to be able to tell. But I feel like there is a lot of ground that can be covered there. And the reason why is because I keep thinking about when Vader and Obi-Wan reconnect on the Death Star. And Vader says to Obi-Wan two things. He says, "You should not have come back." And the other thing he says is, "When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master. The circle now complete." You know what I mean? And I loved those lines because it speaks so much to the history that these two characters have. And I would love for that. I would love that somewhere in there, Vader and Obi-Wan, because Hayden Christensen has been cast into this series, that Vader and that two things get to happen. One, we get to see some buddy action between Anakin and Obi-Wan, because it just has no value to see what they've lost. It has no value to see where they are if you haven't seen what they've lost.
And you can't assume that people have already watched the Clone Wars animated series and learned a lot of that from there. You got to give them some other sorts of nuggets, not just of their buddy, but of the conflict they were already going through as master apprentice, as well as peers as Jedi Knights.
Yeah, and I keep thinking about how Tarkin says to Vader, he's dead. He's long dead now, You're the last of their religion. And I keep thinking about how That those are words that weren't intended to mean anything, but they could mean something in this story. That maybe Obi-Wan and Vader have a meeting at this midpoint between when the end of Revenge of the Sith and the start of Star Wars, where you have this midpoint where they do reconnect. And maybe when Vader is the learner, he's the learner of the Sith. That he's still the learner of the dark side, and that Obi-Wan is meeting Vader at a time where Obi-Wan is just trying to escape, and there's enough that's there to provide some really great conflict between these two characters, and still be able, when you see them reconnect, you should not have come back. That line
You
always
know
stuck
what?
with me. You should
You
not have
just
come back.
you just triggered something for me. He also says when they first arrive on the Death Star and Vader's walking through, he goes, "Lord Vader, what is it? I felt a
Yeah,
presence I haven't," and then he just stops
yeah,
and then walks off, like with commanding presence, walks off set, exit stage right. And it made me think that maybe one of the things we could speculate here is that they do exactly what you're describing. They have a sort of moment, or more than one moment, over the decade, over those many years, but the way that they connect is actually through the Force. That they feel each other's presence and touch through the Force,
yep,
and periodically they actually their minds interact throughout the Force, throughout the as Vader's actually getting stronger on the dark side. Obi-Wan's actually probably getting stronger on the light side, being by himself. At least for a few years, he's getting stronger because he's able to dedicate his mind really until he starts to struggle himself. And of course, Vader struggles because we know Vader hates the Emperor by the time we get to, you know, uh, Return of the Jedi. Sorry, blinking my mind.
oh yeah,
But by the time we get there, we know that Vader is not happy with the Emperor. Like, he's not at all. He's doing his own thing. The comic books sitting behind you, the
oh yeah.
Vader series, we know that they are not friends. He's
Mm-mm.
doing his best, but he knows that there's nothing he can do at that point. And I'm really curious now that you say that, like, could they actually connect with each other throughout the Force mentally over those years? Not often, but they do enough that over time, at first it's sort of like just kind of exploring each other a little bit and we'll just let it go. And then eventually maybe they connect close to some degree, and then Vader, puts his commanding presence in there, kind of like we've seen the same sort of themes through, like with Starkiller in the games and things like that, where Vader has his own apprentices, and then is commanded by the Emperor to go kill his own apprentice. He's like, I had no choice. My master told me to do this, and sorry, buddy, I tried to train you, but I got to do what I got to do. Kills you, done. Like, I can imagine something there happening that ends up driving a further wedge and like a full cutoff between the two of them, which creates even more anger and angst for Vader, and almost a more like depression for Obi-Wan, like or resignment of like, okay, this is just what this is. I can't bring him back. I've tried to connect with him. I'm resigned to this now. This is what I've got to commit myself to. I'm kind of curious if that's part of the arc of like he finally gets to a point. He's like, okay, this is I have to fully commit to this, and I can't let myself be distracted anymore.
Yeah, see, by the way, Disney, I hope that you're watching this. We're giving you a lot of great content. We're giving it to you. You can
Free of
take
charge.
this.
The
Free of
goodness of our
charge.
hearts.
The thing that I think is great is the original 1977 Star Wars, of course, is not accommodating for Darth Vader being Luke's father, Darth Vader being Anakin Skywalker, right? But it sets up some cool boundaries, and you can really embrace those boundaries, like for example, when Obi-Wan sees, and when Vader sees Obi-Wan, and he's like, the last when we met last, I was but the learner. Um, I actually think that's great because you can really lean into that in this series, because he's not saying, when last we met, I was on the side of a volcano and on fire. I really like that you can actually pull in, like, that there was this other time that they knew each other, that there was this moment, and maybe that's the formation of the point of view, the real point of view story, that my friend Anakin, which again, if you're going to cast Hayden Christensen, anyone could be in a suit. If you're casting Hayden Christensen, it's to give those moments between Obi-Wan and Anakin this life that they could have had. I feel like that's what you can do. And so you can live in the boundaries of the 1977 Star Wars of you should not have come back. Maybe it's Obi-Wan that leaves, or maybe it's Obi-Wan that goes away, and Vader, who has hunted the galaxy, by the way, for Luke Skywalker, that Vader is hunting the galaxy for Obi-Wan. And maybe it's Obi-Wan that's like that there is some recognition of something that's passing. I always thought it was fun too that Obi-Wan, and again, this is 1977, so they didn't have all the lore set up, but Obi-Wan says, "You're only a Vader says, I'm the master now," and Obi-Wan says, "Only a master of evil, Darth." And he doesn't call him any other name but Darth and Vader. And I like this idea of Obi-Wan makes this transition, and we don't get to see it. So I hope in this series we do. It's the reverse that Luke goes through. Obi-Wan goes from Anakin, Anakin, Vader. And Luke goes from Vader, Anakin, my father. Mm-hmm. And I love those opposite stories, because by the time you get to Jedi, you get a very jaded Obi-Wan who says, the good man that we knew was gone. He's more machine now than man, only twisted and evil. He didn't know Vader the Machine, according to what we had seen. And at the end of Revenge of the Sith, we didn't get any of that. And in Jedi, he knows that he's more machine now than man. We know that he's twisted. There is some experience that Obi-Wan has had. So I hope that we get to see that. And I also hope that we get to hear something like, why would you bring Luke, why would you hide out on the planet where Anakin is from? Wouldn't you think he would come here to try to find you? And I will hope that Obi-Wan then says something to the effect of, I knew he would never come here because he hates sand.
Gets everywhere. Just like he tells Padme, it gets everywhere.
Yeah, he hates sand.
So I went to machine. He gets in his boots, it cranks his joints up. I mean, it's just a whole thing. And then he needs an oil bath next to C-3PO.
Yes,
it's just awkward because you guys are bathing next to each other.
Oh, thank the maker, you know?
He's like, he made me, so I don't know what's happening, man.
Again, gold. It's all gold we're giving you, Disney. You could just take any part of this.
Just, just throw us some likes. Just a thumbs up.
Yes,
just a thumbs up.
Exactly.
Maybe you hit the subscribe button, that little bell, just anything. Any little thing would be awesome.
We visit the set. We give you some notes. All free of charge.
I would happily get the two of us together to drive out. We'll get a carpool from SAC and the East Bay. We'll just drive out to Skywalker Ranch. It's not a big deal. We can drive.
Not a big deal. We can totally help you out.
We're in the East Bay, man. We're in NorCal. We can just drive on over. It's not a huge deal. No worries. Well, listen, this has been fantastic. I love all the speculation. I cannot wait for this show to come out, and we're going to keep up on the news. We wanted a couple of things. One, we both got some new Star Wars swag on. Ryan, you go first. You got some cool stuff.
Oh yeah,
I like it.
So this was actually, I got two things, and they're both gifts. So thank you to my friend Mateo. Thank you to my cousin Elizabeth. So the first one is what I'm wearing right now. It's a What's Its Mission BB-8 shirt. So if you are a How Did This Get Made fan, and you're a fan of June, asking when Paul brought home the BB-8 toy, and she hates all robots. And she saw it rolling around on the ground and asked, what's its mission? This is one of my favorite things. Classic. So yes, I've got this. And then also my cousin was able to get me this amazing shirt down in Disneyland, or I guess it's downtown Disney, which was a really cool thing to get. They saw this polo with the Millennium Falcon, and they got it for me. So I'm always surrounded by great Star Wars gifts, and happy to show those off. But awesome. You've got something too.
So I've got my new Ahsoka shirt. As most people know, that Ahsoka is hands down my favorite character in Star Wars, no question whatsoever. And I'm trying to go more color. I'm usually in blacks and grays all the time. My wife has been encouraging me to wear more color, so I bought a bright blue shirt to fit with this colorful background. And then a young Ahsoka, so she's still Padawan. It's probably a couple seasons into the Clone Wars, so I got her. And then I was showing you earlier my new obnoxiously large Funko.
I love
so
this.
For everyone out there, you probably know my obsession with Funko bobbleheads, especially Star Wars. And so Target put out this special release of this particular bobblehead right here. Yeah, It's a full bobblehead. And it was special release. We had to pre-order it. It's like $30, I think. Oh, get it. Limited edition. $30. It's like a little more expensive than the normal bobblehead. Okay, it's special. No big deal. Then it arrives in this package that is this huge box. When we get home from a vacation, we're like, what is this? We open it. My wife and I are like, did you know it was going to be that big? I mean, don't worry. I am not complaining. I love this. It is super cool. It is super solid, too. Like, this thing is, like, hard plastic. But I was not expecting a massive Stormtrooper. So, of course, it's getting a prominent place in the shed.
Oh, no, it's awesome. It's awesome. I love it. I feel like that could be a part of a home security system. Dude, you like peek in the window and it's like, hey, is that a person back there? Because it looks like right over your right shoulder. It's legit awesome. It's very cool.
I've got Slave One and I got my Stormtrooper. And you can't see it's just off frame here, but I've got on my other shelf 2 new bobbleheads. I got a Darth Malak and Darth Malak and why am I blanking on his name? I can't think of his name. Maul. Sorry, Darth Maul. I'm like looking right at him. I'm like, Darth Malak and Darth Maul. Amazon actually had a Darth Revan bobblehead.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, oh my God, I am buying this. It was $109. I'm like, I am not buying this. I love bobbleheads. I'm not spending $100 on a bobblehead. I mean, don't get me wrong. It was legit. Full, like, classic Sith helmet, hood, red lightsabers. I mean, it looked fantastic. And it was like 6 of them left. And I'm like, I can't. I just can't do it. I can't bring myself to spend that money on a bobblehead. But that's our swag for the week. Thank you all so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Robert, I think you're still out there. Thank you for my buddy Robert from a live streaming group. He is here as well. Right, so thanks for watching, dude. We appreciate it. And before we go, we've been talking about this and teasing it for a while. So we're going to keep this open until, let's say, the end of the weekend. But if you've been on the show tonight, watching the show, or if you're catching this in the replay before Sunday, put a comment down below in the video here on YouTube. And we're going to raffle off a copy of that Thrawn book I mentioned earlier. That was the little tease in the beginning. We're going to raffle that book off here by this weekend. So put your comments. If you missed it this live, we'll post it on all the socials so you can see it. Get a comment in there, and you're going to get a free book.
Right on.
Anything you want to leave everybody with before we wrap tonight?
I would love to hear people's ideas on what they'd like to see in an Obi-Wan show, what their hopes and dreams are, possible surprise guest casts. I mean, it seems like they got Natalie Portman to come back for Thor. I would love to see some type of Padme Amidala connection back in this story. I'd love to see any comments on that. Would be great to kind of pick that up. So if you've got an episode idea that you think would be worthwhile pitching, it'd be great to see it. But otherwise, you can always follow me on at Twitter at Ryan Rose, where I talk about a lot of this stuff and technology and a bunch of other things. So always glad to be with you talking about Star Wars.
Awesome. You can find me on all the internets too at Jeff Bull Tech, and you can follow all of our latest news from the Kessel Chat at the Kessel Chat on Twitter and Instagram and all the other places too. Ryan, have an awesome night. Thank you for being here, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we will talk to you soon.
Right on. Hey, good night, everybody.